Basically, we got a chance to audition and had a showcase for Atlantic Records, along with the management company, because Greg couldn't work with us no longer. He went through a situation. He turned us over to David Cook and Steve Cohen, Platinum Gold Productions. They got us to deal with Atlantic Records. It was a great audition for Sylvia Rome, and she loved it. We came back, and we auditioned for her again, one of her partners, Merlin Bob. Merlin Bob was her partner. He kind of like rap and everything, so when we auditioned for him and her again for the second time, we did a rap. And when we did a rap for Merlin Bob, that kind of like sealed the whole deal for us. And, you know, Atlantic Records, the whole staff, they fell in love with us.
Okay, now you guys got signed to Atlantic, and from your point of view, talk about the debut album with Mamacita, My Heart, and working with Eddie, Levert, the whole Levert camp, and then, of course, Chucky.
We had teamed up with Chucky and Gerald a whole lot later after we had gotten the deal. We were at our management office, and they took us somewhere in Hollywood to meet up with Gerald Levert and Mark Gordon, and we were just so ecstatic. I believe we worked with Gerald even before we got with Chucky. So Gerald was the first one who we had got with, and they had did two songs. They did Mamacita, and they did For You. No, not For You. Well, they did For You for the Attitude album. They did I Like That from the very first album. And then after we got those two songs done, we were in the studio. We had already met Chucky, but we just hadn't got a chance to work with him at the time that we had first met him. So it was about maybe 2-3 months after that, after we met Chucky, we were in the studio with Chucky doing My Heart. So we recorded Mamacita first, and I Like That first before we did the My Heart song. And Chucky had produced My Heart and She's My Favorite Girl, a song that Alan had wrote. So basically, that's kind of what happened. The other funny story is that we didn't even have a name at the time. We had so many different names at one time, they just called us the Guys. And so we had that name for a minute, but we really couldn't keep that name because of the group Guy. They were getting ready to come out, so we couldn't keep that name. So 3 days prior to Mamacita coming out, Mamacita came out in May of 1988. Steve had to graduate from high school, and so he was the last one to graduate. And in 1988, they released Mamacita in the month of May, and then he graduated. Right after he graduated, we were just out on the road traveling and touring all over the place. So it was basically like right after Steve had graduated from high school that we took off, and we began to go ahead and just do shows all over the country and everything.
Okay, and now you guys are out. Now clarify the whole thing about New Edition, because Troop and New Edition has always been like right there at each other as far as male R&B groups, especially during that time period. So clarify that.
Well, New Edition was a group that we always just admired and looked up to. We would perform their songs in talent shows. We would do songs like Cool It Now. We would do a song called Delicious. These were all New Edition songs that we were performing. We were doing A Little Bit of Love Is All It Takes. We did Count Me Out. We performed all of these different songs on New Edition and talent shows. So we were like considered being like the West Coast of New Edition. This was even before we even had a record. But we used to always just admire their music and what they stood for as being entertainers. You know, we still look up to those guys, even though we've never done a show with New Edition. Pretty much everybody has done a show with New Edition except for Troop. I wonder why is that. Something has got to be wrong with that. I don't agree with that. And before this lifetime is over with everyone, we should at least do 1 or 2 shows together at least. So that's the thing that we have doing towards New Edition. We just really love them a lot. We've always paid homage to those guys.
I would definitely love to see that happen because, as I told Alan and Steve and Chucky, you know, you guys are my top 2 favorite groups, so I would definitely pay front row money to go see New Edition and Troop.
I wish somebody else could be Jon Jon and let me see that show. I would love to see that show.
Now, go ahead and clarify the story about All I Do, because I had heard from various sources that it was originally supposed to be on the debut, but it didn't make the cut in time, and it got put on Attitude.
We recorded the demo to All I Do Is Think of You, like, after we were already touring on our first album. So the first album had already been out and everything. We hadn't worked on All I Do Is Think of You at that time. We were already, you know, working the first record. We didn't work on All I Do until, like, much later. But other than that, the song has always just been a beautiful song, and I used to play the song all the time. I had this cassette, the Jackson 5 Moving Violation. I used to play that song all the time. I would be with my best friend, one of my boys, his name was Robin Johnson. We would play that song all day long, all night long. And then one day, the group was together, and we was having a meeting or something like that. And I had this cassette with me, and I brought it over to Rodney's house. And I said, you guys need to listen to this song. I'm telling you. And see, at the time, Steve had the relationship with the label, so we would just go ahead and just tell him, hey, man, take this song to Sylvia. I bet you if we record this song, it's a #1 record, period. It actually became one of our biggest records, even still to this day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because before that, it was just an album cut for the Jacksons, but you guys took it and made it your own, and it's an R&B staple.
Well, to be honest, I heard it as a child. I heard it on a radio station a long time ago. I think out here in Los Angeles, I think the station was called KGFJ or something like that, and they played all of this Think of You. I have relatives that, they act and stuff like that, so that's basically how I kind of got my little, industry thing going on. I have relatives that act. They've done shows like The White Shadow, The Different Strokes, Facts of Life. They've done stuff like that. I have relatives that done that, and I remember one day going to see a play that had something to do with Kim Fields or something like that. And that song came on the radio, and I thought about Kim Fields all night because I heard that song. It was just an incredible song to me. I always thought it was just a beautiful song. Well, I heard it on the radio, just by itself. But when I was a kid, that was 1975, I believe, when that came out, 75 or 79. No, 75. They're like 75.
Yeah, because I heard the Jackson 5 version. It was like a couple of years ago, because by me being as young as I am, I always thought that you guys originally did it, because by me being born in the 80s, I never heard the original version. But both versions are good. But I also want to get your take on B5's version.
It's funny, man. There are people that come up to me, and I honestly, God, I have to tell you the truth. A lot of people have come up to me and say, I don't like it. I don't like it. They tried to do you guys' record, and they didn't give you guys any justice on the record. Because a situation had went down on 106 in Park, and B5 was on there, and they said that they never heard our version. That kind of hurt right there because, to be honest, there's a part that we say, my heart is here to stay, and that's not really the real word. It was so hard to find out what we were trying to hear what Michael was saying. He was saying, you're fine in any way. So if they didn't hear our version, then how did they get that same exact line that we said? You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of hurt me that they were on TV saying that they never heard our version. So, but Pre and AJ, they set the record straight. They put the kids in check, and they let them know. It's all good, though. I like to take on it. I like what Rodney Jerkins did to the track and everything, how they was able to go ahead and sing it the way that they sung it. I thought that it was original the way that they did it. I think that everybody that does a remake should try not to touch the original. You touch the original, but you don't damage it. You have to be careful because when you do a remake, the remake has to be, #1, it has to be a special song. #2, there has to be a special vocalist to carry that record. I mean, you have to be careful. It's almost like someone that has like a mid-tone vocal and they redo a Luther Vandross song. You don't do that. You just don't do that. That's mid-range singing. That's mid-range singers are, Charlie Wilson, Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson. That's where you go to. You don't try to do something that's really not workable for you. To me, be honest, that's like against the law. You got to be careful.
I definitely agree. You're listening to a special edition of The Time Machine on WUAG 103.1 FM, and you're listening to an interview with Jon Jon Harold from Troop. Now, talk about coming off tour from the first album and you going into the studio and making Attitude.
Well, this is another story that I want to talk to you about at first, too, about the Mamacita situation. I was an extra in a movie called Coming to America, that started Arsenio Hall and Eddie Murphy. And I remember being on a bus going up to this site to do some filming or whatever, and I always keep a radio on me. So I played this cassette of Mamacita, and I tell you, Jarrell, a lot of heads on that bus was moving back and forth, side to side, up and down, and I was just saying to myself, wow, we got one. And it ended up being, a #1 record, R&R. It was #2 Billboard, but it was, it's still, that's consistent, still being a #1 record when it's going to radio. So that was a beautiful thing, man. That process, it was really cool because we started working with different producers. We still worked with Gerald, and we still work with Chucky on that album. We worked with Dallas Austin, who's also a producer that came up, and he began to produce Michael Jackson himself as well. So we were able to work with Dallas Austin and Joyce Irby from the group Climax. They did I Will Always Love You, and they did My Music, which was a rap that opened up the Attitude album. And just the recording process of that album was like, I could tell that we were moving on to bigger and better things. I remember recording, what was that? I remember recording, all I do is sing with Chucky Book and all that. We were in the studio, and he had some type of special intro that he wanted me to do. So from me doing that, that's how I was able to work with the other producers and to come out and sing more, because they heard that producers would get together and they would have conversations, they would talk, and it would be a good thing. I got with George Irby, just started to working on I Will Always Love You, and it was a funny thing. I remember being in the studio with everybody at the time.